what I see people often doing is confusing independence with staying in their home. They're two entirely different things.
Welcome to the Blueprint Breakers podcast. What is a blueprint breaker? If you live your life outside the typical traditional lifestyle blueprint, you are a blueprint breaker. We are here to start a conversation, to assemble resources, and to build a community. This podcast is for empowered women in midlife and beyond who are preparing for a powerful next era of life. My name is Amy A. Palmer. I am your host and facilitator for our conversations. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. To stay connected, up to date, and to receive all of our free resources and gifts along the way, join us at community.blueprintbreakers.com. Today, I speak with Star Bradbury, author of Successfully Navigating Your Parents' Senior Years. As the founder of Senior Living Strategy, she regularly collaborates and consults with individuals and families from all walks of life, as well as professionals in the legal, medical, financial, and long-term care insurance world. I learned so much from this conversation. If you are providing care for your parents, or you might be in the future and it's been on your mind, or even if you're thinking about your own care in your senior years, this episode will give you more than one actionable takeaway. Be sure to check out more information about Star and where to find her book in the show notes. Let's dive in.
Hello, Star. Nice to meet you.
It is nice to meet you, Amy. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm so happy to have you here today. I know we have a lot of really important things to talk about. Before we get into it, I'd love to hear a little bit about you. Like, you might know that this is the Blueprint Breakers podcast. So
Great name. I love it.
Yeah, thanks. We really highlight and showcase women who are living a life outside the traditional expectations and the norms. So I'm curious to hear if any of that resonates with you and in what way.
That I've been thinking about that, of course, knowing the name of your podcast and that I would be a guest. And it's funny, I will share with you that I don't necessarily think of myself as a blueprint breaker. However, when I really sort of stop and say, and I'm honest about the reactions I get from some of my friends who say to me, why are you still working? Why would you take on a project of writing a book and they don't necessarily say at your age. But I don't mind sharing with you that I will be 74 in a matter of weeks. And when people say, really, I get that, enough that I know I may not quite look that age. I'm not sure what age I look. But generally, people are a little surprised. And so I always joke that, yeah, my body tells me every morning, that I am that age. Although I work hard at staying healthy and physically active. I think that's part of aging successfully. And so why am I a blueprint breaker? Because when I retired from my very full-time and demanding job that I did love, at 68, I started another business and formed an LLC. Yep. And I decided that I was one of those women who needed, as my friend said, a soft landing, meaning there was no way, there are a lot of reasons. There's no way I could just go cold turkey from the kind of job I had and the kind of work ethic that I have. And then I just knew that wasn't a good idea for me. And the year before I was retiring, and that got postponed due to things beyond my control at work and my dedication to my job. I stayed on an extra year or so, but I planned to start this consulting business, Senior Living Strategies. And I also am wired to help people. I really am. So I knew that what makes me happy and gives me a sense of purpose is to continue. It was to take all this knowledge that I garnered over 25 years in the senior living industry and working with families and helping them make difficult decisions and smart decisions, and some who didn't make good decisions and watch the outcome of that. So I really felt just driven and compelled to finish a book I'd started during COVID. I finished the book and share that information with people And that was a huge commitment. I'm very glad I did. But again, I just felt like I need to pay it forward, help all of you, Gen X, Gen Z, Gen anything, sandwich generation.
Any
Like,
Gen
oh
alphabet.
my God, my parents, what am I going to do? Yeah. So I
Mhm.
guess I am a little bit, and I'm still working. And people say, when are you going to stop? And the answer is, I don't know.
When you're
I'm
ready to.
still,
When
yeah, I don't see that in my immediate future.
yeah. Oh,
I'm
I
just
love
going to
that.
keep working until I decide I
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. So you're breaking the blueprints for retirement is what you're doing.
I am. I think I am.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I know what makes me happy and I know what I need to do. And I really try to pay attention to that. And I would
I love
encourage
that.
all of you out there, look ahead. I know that you may be years away from retiring, but just as I say, it's not too soon to start those conversations with your parents. We're going to get into that. It's probably
Mhm.
not too soon for some of you, some of the listeners to say, and make sure you're building a support system and a life beyond work as well. I had
Right.
to tame the workaholic in me, but I always joke that life is a constant balance between work and family and relationships and children and obligations and all of that. It's, for me, this
Yeah.
constant, how is this healthy? Is this working?
And you were fortunate because it sounds like your career path and your career choice actually was directly tied into your passion. And then later it became connected to your mission. Is that correct or no?
Yes and no, because if anyone had possibly told me that I was going to be working in the senior living field as my career, I would have, if when I was 20 or even maybe even 30, I probably would have said, "What? I am?"
Okay.
So it was not a plan. I think I shared with you briefly, but just before we started recording, that if you said, what did you study in college? And I would say, I have a degree in the performing arts and I was a trained dancer from the time I was 5. And I taught and started a dance company and choreographed and what? But I
Yeah.
wasn't dedicated enough to be a starving artist, truthfully. And I knew that I
Mm,
wanted a family and I knew that was a very difficult path, having grown up in
yeah.
that world. However,
Yeah.
I do want to say that it gave me many skills and abilities completely unrelated to dance that helped me in the business world and helped me succeed in my career in many ways. So I'm grateful for all of those years of
Yeah.
experience in a completely different field. And then I had a whole nother career for 10 years and got completely bored with that and saw where that was going and decided to reinvent myself again and decided, I know I like people. I know I love older people. Why don't I try to change careers and go into senior living? So I kind of
Mhm,
chose it.
mhm. And then when you left sort of the corporate side of that, when you retired from there and you went into consulting, I mean, you chose to continue to serve in that way. What was
Yeah.
it that made you make that choice?
Because the world of senior living, senior health care, do my parents need more help? Oh my gosh.
Mm,
I just got a call from the discharge planner that my mom can't go home. I just got a call from my sister that mom's been diagnosed with dementia. It is a very tough world out there trying to
yeah.
figure out senior living. Most people, if I ask the next 50 people I met, do you know the difference between assisted living and skilled nursing? Do you know the difference between home care or home health care? The answer would be, what? No. Why would
Mhm.
you know? And I had
Right.
25 years in senior living. I ran an assisted living facility. I was a licensed administrator. I ran a memory care facility. I worked in what's called a life care or continuing care retirement community for 18 years. And so I had
Mhm.
all this knowledge and experience. And I looked back at some of the decisions I made, Amy, with my own parents that weren't great. And I realized that I felt obligated to put some of this knowledge and information in a book and also through consulting with families on how
Mhm.
can you develop a plan to age successfully and how can you navigate your parents' senior years. I'm going to plug my book here. After looking at lots and lots of book titles, I finally just said, call it what it is. That's what my agent said. Fully navigating your parents' senior years, critical information to maximize their independence and make sure they get the care they need. I just
Yeah.
thought I need to pass this information on.
Mhm.
It's a good thing I didn't know
Yeah.
how hard it would be. Do not let fear of failure stop you. All of you women out
That
there, you
that's
just
true.
push
That's
through
true.
it.
I shared with you previously that I'm entering that season or will be entering it in the next few years with my parents, and it's already challenging. I'm curious, like, why is this such? It seems to be challenging for everybody involved, like the children, the parents themselves, between siblings. Like it seems to like it's the care, like everybody. So why is it such a challenge?
Oh my gosh, Amy, it's so difficult on so many levels. If you ask me what's the biggest mistake adult children make, my answer is this: assuming that their parents will always be active, healthy. So there's an expression I use in the book, and here's what I say. Once your parents retire, there's the go years, the slow go years, and the no go years. And there's no rule that says you're not going to go from go to no go and skip the slow go altogether. What do I mean by that? Your parents, if they're doing sort of a typical retirement lifestyle, they're traveling, they're doing the things they've been wanting to do all their life. I hear, oh, my dad golfs 5 days a week. He's great. Mom is out with her friends. They just traveled to wherever. They're coming to see me. That's great. And that's wonderful. And it may last a pretty long time depending on your parents' health, but it isn't going to last forever. And it's very hard to see that. It's even hard to watch it. And also siblings say, oh, mom is fine. There's nothing the matter with her. Where you're the one living closer and you're going, she even forgot that I was coming over. I'm seeing changes and I'm not sure what it means. What are the red flags that you should be looking for and not be in denial about? And it's hard to look at your parents who you love and realize that they're sliding, things are starting to change a little bit. And then if you're already in a crisis, or you are their primary support person, or you are the only caregiver or the only child that lives close enough to help, it's scary because you're thinking, how am I going to do what I'm already doing? Meaning my family, my job, my own children, and add the additional stress of caring or even overseeing care for your loved one. So it's challenging. And then if there's a crisis, mom fell and broke her hip. Dad just got diagnosed with dementia. They're not going to discharge him home. They say he can't live alone anymore, and you live 5 states away. And our healthcare system, Amy, was broken before COVID, and now it's worse. And so all of that is one big mess.
Yes. All right. So how do we make it less challenging? How do we navigate it and unravel some of that?
That is exactly why I wrote the book. It's really one of the few books that really focuses on not just caregiving, but what can you do prior to being in a caregiving role to sort of prepare yourself for whatever life might throw at you with your parents. And even for yourself, which brings up what I want to tell people. One of the things that you can do that's absolutely critical, that will make a difference for you, your own sanity, I promise you, is to start these conversations very early with your parents before they retire, while they're still working. Do not wait until there's an event, a health event that puts the whole family in crisis. Then you're operating out of that crisis zone and you're making decisions that are uneducated. And like I say, you just don't know what you don't know. So if you don't know, how can you make a good decision? I even have a made-up family, the Spencers, in the book, that I use as a model for readers as to how a family could kind of go about having these conversations before a crisis. And it goes through sort of their whole life cycle, right? The go, no go, slow go years, to model for my readers how they could go about making a plan as a family. And you start by really having conversations, and people say, oh my God, how do I start this conversation? And here's my tip. You make it about you. You don't make it about your parents. And here's what I mean.
Oh,
So let's do a pretend conversation, Amy. So you're my mom. Okay. Mom, Dad, could we have a conversation? I'm just a little anxious and I'm a little worried because my good friend Sally just is going through this situation with her own parents and she doesn't know what she's doing and she's completely stressed out and her mom was just in the hospital. Whatever is most relevant to you. Her dad fell, blah, 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 or her aunt, it doesn't matter. You're now saying, I'm the one that's worried. I'm the one that's anxious because I don't know what your plans are. We've
Mm.
never talked about it. Now, you're pulling the guilt trick here, and with my permission,
Mhm.
meaning parents love their children. They don't want to worry their children and burden their children. So consequently,
Mhm.
they often won't bring anything up. They're waiting for you in a way to bring it up. But instead of saying, I'm worried about you, no, you do not make it about them. It's all about you. I'm worried. Or, I was just reading about living wills and I haven't done a living will. I never even thought about it. And I want to sit down and talk to you about me doing a living will. And I want to tell you what my wishes are for my end of life. And by the way, I picked so and so to be my healthcare surrogate. Have you done a living? Now,
Ugh.
I would not start with that. That's heavy. You start with,
Yeah.
I know you're retiring in a few years. So what are your plans? Are you going to stay in your house? And the term is age in place. Are you going to stay
Mhm.
in your house as you get older? Because gosh, let's talk about that. What is your plan? Are you thinking about moving? Where are you going to move? What would be important to you if you were thinking about moving? To where? Are you going to look up the AARP senior friendly designated cities? That's a good list to start with, by the way.
That is such great advice, and you've already hit the nail on the head on what I've already done wrong. Because I definitely have expressed my concern for them. It results in a little bit of defensiveness and not wanting to talk
Right.
about it, and definitely like they want to assure me that we've got control. We're all
We're
set.
fine.
We're fine. Everything's taken care of. Our plans are in place. So you're
And at
absolutely
that point, you
right.
can say, that is awesome. I am so lucky to have parents that plan because so and so, her parents aren't planning at all. But you know what? I still don't know what those plans are. I
Right.
just want to know if something happened to you, what would you do? What would you want? Now it gets a little heavier. Now it's, if something happened and you couldn't go up the stairs and all the bathrooms are upstairs, there's no bedroom downstairs, what would you do? Now you're starting to bring up the stuff that you are worried about that maybe they're pretending doesn't exist. The trick is to try to have these conversations when they're not threatening. Now, I can share with you something that's important for you to know and your podcast listeners. You would think, Amy, that as people got older, that they were more willing to talk about what am I going to do if a serious health event happens, but they're not. They're not willing. The closer it comes, the more fear comes up, more reluctance comes up. I don't want you to tell me what to do, and it's hard when the adult children are now shifting into a role that the parents aren't comfortable with. And so that doesn't get easier as parents get older. Typically, that's not true for everybody. But the trick here is to have these conversations earlier. 60, 65, maybe even younger. If you see a diagnosis on the horizon or you're concerned because you're seeing some red flags, and maybe sometimes couples compensate for each other and they don't even see it, then you want to even start those conversations earlier. In the book, I talk about the 5 pillars of aging successfully. The first one is, and again, easily apply to yourself, or if you are looking at helping your parents or you want them to talk to them about it, the first one is, do I want to age in place? Is my home conducive to aging up in? And what if I couldn't go up and down stairs? Or what if I needed more help in my home? Is my bathroom modified? Or there's a ton of things that I have a long list in the book of things to look at, just basic things. Do you want to wait till you've already fallen and broken your hip to try to hire a contractor to change the bathroom? So do I want to stay in this house? And if I don't, what options should I be looking at that will help me age successfully? Moving closer to an adult child, moving closer to really good healthcare and not being 2 hours away from the good hospital, moving into a full service retirement community or life care community. So I talk about all of that in the book. Like, what should you be looking at to evaluate what the options should be? So that's just number one. And then two is, and this is important, especially for you long distance caregivers, gathering critical medical information long before a crisis. Asking your loved ones to tell you, by the way, would you mind sharing with me just some basic critical medical information, not just your living will, which is absolutely critical, and who's your healthcare proxy, advance directives, right? But the name and phone number and contact for your primary doctors, your hospital of choice, your pharmacy. And I'm such a good example. I had two sets of parents, divorced, remarried. One set in Fort Lauderdale, 6 hours away, and one set in New York City. And they both passed away. And I could sit here for 2 hours and tell you disaster stories, and you would question whether I was exaggerating. And I promise you that I'm not. My mom had vascular dementia. She almost burned the apartment down, the whole building down. My father had Parkinson's, and he passed away with end-stage Parkinson's, which also mimics dementia. It was a lot, and I learned a lot. I really did. So critical medical documents, a long, long list. Number three, legal and financial documents. You don't need to ask your parents for their will, but it would be nice to know the name of their attorney and where those documents are. My mother passed away before my stepfather, which was not what we thought. We clearly thought, given medical history, that he would die first, but no. And when I asked him if he had a will, he said, "Oh, yes, I do. And it's at the attorney." And I never thought twice about it. This was years ago. And after he died, I called the attorney. "I don't have his will." "What? He told me you had the will." "No, he never did the will with me. I only did your mom's will." Do you have a copy of his will?" "No." And if I hadn't done at least some of the things that I was smart enough to do ahead of time, it would have been more of a disaster than it was.
Mm-hmm.
So critical legal and financial documents, POA, and then four, how will I pay for long-term care? That's a big one. I'm afraid to give you the figures on what long-term care costs. And then number five, paying it forward. People that have a passion and a purpose and a raison d'etre and a reason to get up every day do much, much, much better aging well than those who don't.
That makes sense. That's really good. Really good. It covers a lot of ground for the caregivers and those that are aging. The other thing that I struggle with, and I don't know, I'm sure there are other people that struggle with something similar, is my parents tend to not be completely forthcoming about the current state of their health. Like we don't get full reports of what's going on, right? We get little bits and pieces, and it's almost like they want to minimize any health challenges that they might have. They're definitely from the generation. I mean, you suck it up. You suck it up, and you're
Right.
strong, and you
And you
move on,
don't
and you keep
burden your
moving.
children.
You
And you
certainly
don't
don't burden your kids. So how do you sort of, as an adult child, how do you find out like what is the full story and what's going on?
It's really interesting because I just had a conversation yesterday with one of my children whose in-laws are close to them, and that's what they're dealing with. But now it's gotten so bad that there is no hiding. There is no minimizing the truth. And of course, it's difficult. So here's what I would say. You remember, you can't change anybody but yourself. Okay. So let's just start with that. That's sort of the foundation, right? However, having said that, I think that I'm speaking personally. If my parents were still alive and I could sit down with them now, here's how that conversation would go. "Mom, Dad, again, you make it about you. I am worried, and I'm worried for me and I'm worried for you. You're in this together. And really, that's where you're heading with this. I have seen a few things, or I'm picking up on some things that I feel like might be going on. And I'm feeling like a little crazy because I don't feel like I have the whole story. And I'm worrying more and more. Is there a problem, Dad, with you or with Mom? And rather than keeping these sort of family secrets, kind of approaching it like that, I want to be in a position to help you, but how can I possibly help you or be supportive or help you, not me, make educated decisions for you help you make the best decisions for yourself if I really don't know what's going on? So I have two principles in my book. Principle number one, that you as an adult child or a senior should be able to apply. How can I maximize my parents or mine independence for the longest possible time? Let's just stick with that. Now, let's go back to this pretend conversation. Do you mind if I ask you, Mom and Dad, a question? Am I right in thinking that you two want to be as independent as you possibly can for as long as you can? What do you think they're going to answer, Amy?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yes.
For sure. You already know that, though.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to say no. They're going to say yes. And you're going to say, of course, I thought that. That's what I was expecting to hear. But that's what I want for you, too. I'm on the same page with you. It's only to my benefit as well that you stay as independent as possible. But how can that happen if I don't really know what's going on and I can't anticipate if there is some serious health thing going on that you're not sharing with me, if there is some kind of diagnosis that you're sort of keeping in the dark, if I don't know that and it's something serious, then how can I really help you with your goal of staying independent for as long as possible? And so you kind of want to make sure that you say, look, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm not interested in you losing your independence. But if you want to maintain your independence, and the thing that people confuse all the time that conflate, it's sort of my pet peeve as a senior living expert, because I see it so often. What I see people often doing is confusing independence with staying in their home. They're two entirely different things. If your home is out in the middle of nowhere and you are lonely and isolated, or you're a widow or widower, or you have no support network and your social connectedness score is 0, how is staying in that house going to maintain your independence? And so when people say, I'm just going to stay in my house, I'm just going to age in place, my answer is, that is a statement. That is not a plan. What is your plan? And how can we look at the factors that would make that plan successful? I don't want anyone to think that I don't think aging in place can be a good plan, because it can be. If it's well thought out, you have a strong support system, the questions you can start asking: what if you couldn't drive? What if your spouse or your partner passed away? What if you needed a 911 call? How long is it going to take them to come and help you? How close are you to the things that bring you happiness and joy? You can make a plan, but it does require time and effort. And if you want to be part of that plan with your parents, you have to have these conversations.
Yes. Yes. How about, do you have any advice for solo agers like myself who do not have children? What should our preparation look like, or what's your experience with that?
For solo agers, it's even more imperative that you take an honest, hard look at your support team. So you may not have children. I know people with lots of kids and can't count on them. By support team, let's break that out a little bit. I always say, make a list of the people you could call at 2 a.m. who are going to come take you to the hospital. You don't want to call 911, but you need somebody to be there for you, or to take care of your dog when you're in the hospital, your cat, or that you could call in an emergency comfortably, that could be there for you. They could be neighbors. It could be a niece or nephew. It could be really dear friends. I think that older women are going to have to start communes and build a support team for them. I do think we're going to have to reinvent senior living and senior healthcare. We're all going to live longer. And that means that we need to have a consciousness. I'd like to call it conscious aging.
Yeah.
I tell my younger friends, if you want to be healthy in your 60s and 70s, you can't suddenly decide that you're going to be healthy and start working out. I mean, you can start building muscle even at 90. So I don't want to tell people otherwise, but you have to be conscious about, who do I want to grow into? What kind of a person would I like to be? Do I want to be a wise crone? And I say that positively. A wisdom keeper and someone who passes on, pay it forward to the people in our world. And that doesn't happen accidentally.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't happen
I agree.
by chance.
Yeah. This is wonderful. Do you have any final thoughts or comments for the listeners?
My hope and my prayer is that you take what I've passed on to you and recognize that you just can do what you can do and don't beat yourself up for what you can't do. I really would say if you want to educate yourself and you want to be helpful, genuinely helpful to your parents, do what you can to stay ahead of that curve. Inform yourself. My book covers a broad spectrum from beginning the conversations to when your parents need more help and care. And this last section is a final exit plan. Do what you can do and then, move forward.
Yeah. That's my biggest takeaway. Have the conversations, have them sooner, not later. Make a
Right.
plan, make it sooner rather than later, and do what you can. As much of a plan as you can have is going to be a benefit.
And the principles I talk about in the book are really there to help you sort of shape your path forward and shape your conversations. And no matter what your situation is, you can apply these principles to help guide you. And that was my motivation and passion.
Yeah. I will be sure to put a link to the book in the show notes. Now, again, the name of the book is
Successfully Navigating Your Parents' Senior Years. And it's available on Amazon, really Barnes & Noble, any major book site. As I told you, was not self-published. It was published by my wonderful publisher, Ben Bella Publishing. And it's also in Audible.
That's where I got it. I got it from Audible.
Okay. And a lot of people start with Audible and then they buy a hard copy so they can take notes and bookmarks.
I can already tell. I can already tell I'm going to want to do that.
But still, it's a good place if you know that you're going to take your walk every day and have time to listen or listen in the car. Then start with that, and then share it with your siblings and even with your parents. You could even say, "I got this book, and I really learned so much." And since I want to be able to be on your support team, can you read this book? And let's have a conversation.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Yes. Successfully Navigating Your Parents' Senior Years.
Star Bradbury. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Star.
And please, if you like it and you read it, write a review.
Write a review. Yes. Review.
Those are important.
It is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Blueprint Breakers podcast, a blueprint for navigating your parents' senior years. And a very special thank you to my guest, Star Bradbury. Thank you again for listening and sharing this episode with your friends. If you haven't done it yet, please join us in our Blueprint Breakers Facebook group. Have a great week. Keep on breaking those blueprints and rewriting your own.